Trains magazine. For more than 55 years, it has set the standard for excellence in railroad writing and photography. Now Trains brings you a series of video documentaries produced to the same high standards you've come to expect from Trains magazine. Trains on Location. Cajon Pass, Santa Fe's heroic crossing of the mountains that ring Los Angeles. You'll ride a fast freight east from San Bernardino to Victorville, and you'll hit the highlights along the way, including Sullivan's Curve, Steins Hill, the top of the pass at Summit, and the flyover at Frost, plus plenty of action on Southern Pacific's parallel line. Conrail's Horseshoe Curve. Capture the spirit of the famed Pennsylvania Railroad between the shop town of Altoona and historic Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Along the way, you'll visit Conrail's awesome Juniata locomotive shops. Visit interlocking towers where operators practice a vanishing craft, and thrill to the sound and fury of famous Horseshoe Curve. Burlington Northern's Chicago Racetrack. Trains once declared this to be the greatest piece of railroad in the world. And based on the evidence of this show, there's little reason to disagree. Appalachian Conquest. Is the Corbin Main Line of CSX one of the best-kept train-watching secrets in America? It depends how you feel about coal and merchandise trains grinding up mountain grades and blasting through tunnels. Southern Pacific's Cascade Crossing. 44 miles of twisting track, brutal grades, and awesome scenery in the Cascade Mountains of western Oregon. It's SP at its fighting best, at the golden height of summer and the frigid depths of winter. Conrail's Chicago Gateway. It's more than just Conrail's freights on the Chicago line between East Chicago and South Bend, Indiana. It's also the trains of Amtrak, CP Rail, the Chicago, South Shore, and South Bend, and Camera-Shy Steel Mill Railroads. Amtrak's Northeast Corridor. Explore Amtrak's high-speed multi-track main line between New York and Washington, D.C. Intercity trains and commuter trains. Switching operations at Washington Union Station, and freight action on nearby CSX. Tehachapi, the most celebrated train-watching spot in the American West. SP's crossing of the Tehachapi Mountains between Mojave and Bakersfield is the stage for non-stop railroad action, including the colorful trains of Burlington Northern Santa Fe. On the heart of the Wisconsin Central, you'll visit America's premier regional railroad between Waukesha and Neenah, Wisconsin. Get ready for a parade of die-hard diesels from EMD and pulse-pounding action on the railroad's steepest grade, Byron Hill. San Francisco, rails around the Bay Area. Treat yourself to the action and variety of freight, passenger, and tourist railroading around the beautiful San Francisco Bay Area. And that includes a rainbow of diesel locomotive models from unique to antique. Ask for Trains on Location at your favorite hobby store, or you may order direct by calling our 24-hour toll-free line at 1-800-533-6644. That's 1-800-533-6644. And look for more in the Trains on Location documentary series.
Hi, I'm Kevin Keefe, editor of Trains magazine. When Trains last visited Wyoming's Powder River Basin in November 1989, business was booming for the two railroads that serve this coal region, Burlington Northern and Chicago and Northwestern. But today, BN is part of Burlington Northern and Santa Fe, and Northwestern, well, it's vanished into the giant Union Pacific Railroad. The names of the players may have changed, but the game remains the same. Millions of tons of coal moving behind some of the biggest, most interesting diesel locomotives in service today. So sit back, relax, and enjoy one of the last frontiers of American heavy-haul railroading, the Powder River Basin. The Railroad Museum in Douglas, Wyoming offers a clue to the origins of the railroads that serve the Powder River Basin coal fields of northeastern Wyoming. The Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad opened a line in 1894 from Alliance, Nebraska, northwest through the coal fields of eastern Wyoming to Billings, Montana. In 1908, the railroad gained control of the Colorado and Southern, which gave it a route from Denver north to Wendover, Wyoming. The Q then extended a line from Billings to meet the CNS in 1914. 56 years later, the Q itself was merged with the Great Northern, Northern Pacific, and Spokane, Portland, and Seattle into the Burlington Northern Railroad. The Burlington Route Herald gave way to BN's stylized logo and Cascade green paint. The development of low-sulfur coal mining in Wyoming's Powder River Basin region in the early 1970s found BN in the right place at the right time. The old Burlington route between Alliance and Laurel, Montana, framed the north end of the region. The CNS route south of Wendover framed the south end. It only remained for BN to connect the two routes with a north-south line that would tap the basin's coal. The Chicago and Northwestern Railway first appeared in the region as the Fremont, Elkhorn, and Missouri Valley. The railroad built west from the division point of Chadron, Nebraska. The tracks reached Douglas and Casper, Wyoming before the railroad ran out of money and called it quits in Lander, Wyoming. The route became known as the Cowboy Line. In 1973, Northwestern decided it wanted a piece of the Powder River Basin action. It filed an application to build a line into the coal fields from Shawnee on the Cowboy Line. To ensure competition, the Interstate Commerce Commission ruled that Northwestern and BN file a joint line application. But Northwestern couldn't come up with the money to finance its portion of the construction. It finally obtained financial backing from Union Pacific. Financed as Western Railroad Properties, Northwestern began operating to the basin in August 1984. 12 years later, UP acquired the Northwestern and took its place in the Powder River Basin. BN, meanwhile, merged with the Santa Fe Railroad to form the Burlington Northern Santa Fe. Sure, the names have changed, but the showdown between the two railroads that serve the Powder River Basin remains the same. There are actually two parts to our Powder River Basin story. The first part revolves around the nucleus of BNSF's operations in the region, Alliance, Nebraska. Alliance is the cornerstone of what is known as the Inner Loop. From Alliance, the loop heads north over one of the region's biggest bottlenecks, Crawford Hill. Then it continues through Edgemont to Gillette, Wyoming. At Donkey Creek, the loop turns south down the Oren subdivision to Bridger Junction, then east to Guernsey, Wyoming. It continues east to Northport before swinging back to Alliance. Roughly 80% of the trains that BNSF generates are loaded in the inner loop every day. The second part of our story centers on the Oren subdivision, the BNSF-UP joint line that serves the Powder River Basin coalfields. We'll start at Donkey Creek at the north end of the line, several miles east of Gillette, Wyoming. We'll then head south through East Coal Creek Junction and Reno Junction to UP's terminal at Bill. From there, we'll continue south to the end of the joint trackage at Shawnee Junction, where UP trains regain their own rails. Crawford Hill and the Oren Sub may be more than 30 miles apart, but they both handle hundreds of coal trains each week. To power those trains, BNSF and UP rely on 6-motor, high-horsepower units built by General Electric and General Motors. Locomotive consists on BNSF coal trains come in 3 varieties. You'll see solid or near-solid lash-ups of older GE C30-7s. Although they use more fuel than newer units, the C30s can still get down on their knees and pull. In the early 1990s, BN sprang for 100 SD60Ms. They arrived on the property in BN Cascade green, white, and black paint. Their comfort cabs are more comfortable and offer greater protection to crews in the event of a collision. Finally, you'll see consists with 3 GM SD70 Max. These 4,000 horsepower units were the only BN units to wear this distinctive dark green and cream paint scheme. BNSF 70 Max now wear the railroad's Heritage 2 paint scheme, but they share an important technological advance with earlier 70 Max, AC traction. Unlike the DC motors found in BNSF's C30s and SD60s, the 70 Max AC traction motors offer improved reliability and fewer moving parts. But the biggest advantage is that AC traction provides better pulling power, especially at low speeds. Granted, this particular 70 Max seems happy doing 45 miles per hour, but the 70 Max seem at home lugging 12,000-ton coal trains uphill at 10 or 12 miles per hour. The 70 Max also feature GM's HCTR radial trucks. Unlike conventional trucks, the axles steer themselves through curves. This allows between 12 and 20% higher adhesion. It also reduces wheel flange and rail wear. Unlike BNSF, UP uses only AC traction locomotives in the Powder River Basin. UP 8094 is an SD90 Mac hybrid called an SD90-43AC. The unit contains a 4,300 horsepower two-stroke diesel engine that can be upgraded later to a 6,000 horsepower four-stroke engine. To handle the heat generated by the larger engine, the SD90 Mac has monster radiators that angle out from the car body. Like BNSF's SD70 Max, the 90 Max ride on GM's self-steering trucks. UP 6632 is a General Electric AC 4400. UP calls this unit a C44AC. Its AC traction motors ride in high-adhesion, low-weight transfer trucks known as bolsterless trucks. Because of their appearance, they're informally known as rollerblades. The large winged radiator section at the rear of the car body is common to both AC and DC versions of the C44. UP's acquisition of Southern Pacific and Chicago and Northwestern brought more AC 4400s to Powder River Basin coal trains. SP 368 is one of several hundred AC 4400s inherited by UP. Northwestern 8827 is one of 35 AC 4400s purchased by that railroad for Powder River coal service in the early 1990s. Northwestern designed the lightning bolt version of its yellow and green paint scheme specifically for its comfort cab-equipped GEs. The newest GEs in the coal fields are UP's AC 6000 convertibles. Despite what their model designation implies, these units operate with a 4,400 horsepower diesel engine. But as the convertible name suggests, these units can be converted to a 6,000 horsepower engine at a later date. At first glance, you might not realize that Alliance is a railroad town. Elsewhere on the old BN, a railroad town would boast several taverns, perhaps a 24-hour restaurant to service crews coming and going at all hours of the day. But here, the downtown is clean and quiet, almost abandoned. The feeling you get talking to local business people is that Alliance is content to remain small town in demeanor and outlook. Alliance seems happy to be a quiet community of tidy houses and tree-lined streets. The only clue that you're in a railroad town is a semi-truck loaded with wheel sets parked outside someone's home. You can't say Alliance is embarrassed by its railroad heritage. Parked in the open on the north side of town is a lovingly preserved CB&Q steam engine. Number 719 is a 460 10-wheeler built in the company's Havelock, Nebraska shops in 1903. The engine represents the arrival in Alliance of a Burlington predecessor, the Burlington and Mississippi River, in 1888. Like many communities in the West, the railroad served as a lifeline to the outside world. At Alliance, ranchers could ship their cattle to market in Chicago. Meanwhile, manufactured goods, food, and textiles arrived from factories and farms in the East. By the end of World War I, the railroad's importance to towns like Alliance was threatened by a new transportation mode, the highway. By World War II, the railroads themselves seemed as outdated as the 719. With the development of new and better roads, the truck and automobile surpassed the railroad in terms of moving freight and passengers. Alliance offers a curious tribute to the ascension of the automobile in post-war America. In 1982, a geologist named Jim Reinders built a replica of Stonehenge out of old cars and called it Carhenge. Far from an elaborate joke, Carhenge is a scholarly copy of the mysterious circle of stones on England's Salisbury Plain. In fact, each of the 33 cars is about the size of the stones found at Stonehenge. Carhenge violated land use codes and was slated for removal, but a booster group, Friends of Carhenge, came to its rescue. You can find it a few miles north of Alliance, as compelling in its way as the original in England. The BNSF terminal in Alliance is the nucleus of the railroad's Powder River Basin operations. It supports 901 locomotives, roughly one-fourth of BNSF's diesel fleet. In accordance with Federal Railroad Administration rules, the South Yard does 1,000-mile inspections on the 254 sets of equipment assigned to Powder River Coal Service. Car knockers in the South Yard can kick out bad order cars or repair them in train. From Alliance, an inspected train can make a round trip to their destination, then return for another complete inspection. At the end of the day, the South Yard will handle about 70 trains, including 10 general freights. Kansas Street bridges the north end of the South Yard. North of the overpass is the connection with the South Runaround track. Inbound empties can bypass the North Yard and enter the South Yard for servicing. You expect a shop that maintains more than 900 locomotives to be big, even state-of-the-art. What you might not expect is a health center located inside the shop complex. This is no basement room with little more than weightlifting equipment either. The center offers employees and their family members a chance to work out. We can only wonder what the pipe fitters and machinists who once maintained 10-wheeler 719 would think of this. The rest of the shop would probably baffle most steam-era workers as well. The water tanks, coal chutes, turntable, and roundhouse that once serviced Burlington steamers and diesels are gone, replaced by a modern structure with roll-away doors. Inside, the shop is clean and relatively tidy, an important safety consideration. The interior of the shop is also quiet, thanks to a policy that requires all locomotives to be shut down when inside. You expect to see locomotives lying around the shop. Pool Power brings a variety of paint schemes to the east end of the shop complex, including the dark blue of Regional Railroad, Minnesota, and Iowa Rail Link. What you might not expect to find are the last U-30Cs on the BNSF system. Number 5392 and its sister rolled out of GE's Erie, Pennsylvania plant in 1974. The 3,000 horsepower U-30Cs carried the brunt of BN's booming coal traffic in the 1970s, along with BN's GM-built SD40-2s. They began to die off when reinforcements arrived in the form of GM's 60 series units between 1986 and 1991. Changes in technology also spelled the end for these cabooses. They lost their place at the rear of BN freight trains in favor of telemetry devices that monitor air brake pressure from the last car in a train. The fact that one of these museum pieces retains its Burlington silver paint and logo only adds to their mystique. Both the shop and the yard operate around the clock in all kinds of weather. In late afternoon, angry storm clouds begin to gather west of town. It doesn't stop an eastbound general freight from pulling into the east leg of the Y at the north end of the terminal. The worker who shows up first climbs on and cleans the windows of the lead locomotive, a GM 4-motor GP50. Moments later, the new crew arrives. They'll take the train 237 miles to Ravenna, Nebraska, the first crew change east of Alliance. By nightfall, Alliance is in the grip of a violent summer storm. Do the hostlers and train crews at the terminal take a break, hide out until the storm's over? Not a chance. The 45 miles between East Alliance and the start of Crawford Hill doesn't prepare you for what will follow. Sure, a telephoto lens reveals a track profile that's less than tabletop flat. But for the most part, this stretch of track looks flat and straight, and the scenery resembles anything you'd expect to find in rural Iowa or even Illinois. Midwestern resemblance is strongest at Hemingsford. The local co-op provides a backdrop unique to rural America, where silos and elevators are as prominent as skyscrapers in New York or Los Angeles. Looks are deceiving. Despite its green and yellow paint, this unit does not belong to Northwestern or UP. It works for the Neb Coda, a short line that took over the remnants of Northwestern's Cowboy line out of Chadron, Nebraska. At the back of the elevator, another Neb Coda crew shuffles cars with a former BN GP9 that once belonged to the Northern Pacific. Although BNSF serves the elevator, Neb Coda can offer the co-op lower cost switching, even with the cost of BNSF hauling the Neb Coda units from the BNSF Neb Coda interchange at Crawford, 38 miles to the west. The Neb Coda aside, BNSF maintains a high profile in Hemingsford. An 11,000-foot siding provides the BNSF Fort Worth dispatcher with a convenient place to meet trains. The biggest operational headache on the Alliance Division is Crawford Hill. It's 13 miles long and cursed with a 1.5% eastbound ruling grade up Pine Ridge to Belmont. The line was upgraded between August 1981 and August 1982 as part of a $13.6 million project. The railroad replaced the single-track route with two main tracks. Over 2.2 million cubic tons of dirt and rock were removed. The remnants of the old right-of-way are still visible from the relocated main line. The relocation also allowed BN to forsake Belmont Tunnel, at one time the only railroad tunnel in Nebraska. Helpers spell relief on Crawford Hill. They consist of 4 SD-40-2s spliced by a fuel tender. This is a converted tank car that feeds the diesels with 1 week's worth of fuel. The SD-40-2s are also special. They're heavier than BNSF's run-of-the-mill 40-2s, which allows them to put more weight on the rail for better adhesion. They also have taller gear ratios, which allows them to pull harder. At first look, the good times seem to have passed Belmont by. The abandoned houses along the BNSF right-of-way bring to mind the desert ghost towns we found on our visit to BNSF's Mojave Main Line in Southern California. Nonetheless, Belmont remains a busy place on the railroad. This is where eastbound trains stop so the helpers can be removed. The helpers are then sent back down the hill to Crawford, traffic permitting. Almost 75% of the trains over Crawford Hill need to be shoved. To increase capacity, the railroad has pondered triple tracking the route. Another option consists of remote control locomotives placed in the middle and at the end of the train, called distributed power units, or DPUs. On the other hand, Crawford Hill provides a separation issue for Alliance Yard. Eastbound trains get shoved over the hill at a certain pace. That allows the yard to pace itself based on the time it takes a train to get over the hill. Triple track and DPUs may bring longer trains, but the terminal would have to notch up operations to match the increased capacity. You'll see non-coal trains on Crawford Hill. To quote BNSF Superintendent Tim Godsell, "It's unfortunate that the intermodal cars are the same gauge as the coal. They think they can run their intermodal on our coal tracks." From Godsell's point of view, intermodal and general freight trains are salmon swimming upstream against his coal trains. So why doesn't BNSF run these priority trains over the Front Range route? After all, the old Burlington CNS route spans Laurel, Montana, and Denver. Unfortunately, the route over Crawford Hill is faster. The Front Range route is limited in terms of length and tonnage. What's more, the in-train forces are excessive. As Godsell says, when you get your Sony TV, you want it to be in working order. For better or worse, the Butte subdivision and Crawford Hill offers a smoother, safer ride for freight. Problems with priority trains arise when they get locked in behind a fleet of coal trains. Another difficulty is when the dispatcher tries to run a priority train around a coal train. Does the coal train suffer a delay while the priority train sacks it, or does the priority train simply fall into the natural traffic flow? The good news, priority trains have more horsepower per ton. That allows them to quickly run around a slower moving coal train. Another benefit is that priority trains generally don't need helpers. Still, the majority of traffic on Crawford Hill is coal trains headed to and from the Powder River Basin and mines in southeastern Montana. BNSF is the nation's largest hauler of low-sulfur coal, most of which originates in the Powder River Basin. Nearly 10% of the electricity produced in the United States is generated from coal hauled by BNSF. And much of that coal rides the Butte subdivision, which makes Crawford Hill one of the best train watching spots in the West. The Orange Sub is the backbone of the inner loop. Opened for business on November 6, 1979, it cost $125 million to build. At 127.3 miles, it's the longest stretch of new railroad since the Great Northern and Western Pacific built a new line from Bend, Oregon to Keddie, California in 1931. Donkey Creek is the northern gateway to the Powder River Basin region. This coal train on the north leg of the Y is on the Black Hills Sub. In 112 miles, it will enter the Butte Sub for the trip over Crawford Hill to Alliance. The next train rolls off the Orange Sub and heads east to the Black Hills Sub. Like the train before it, it will follow the Butte Sub over Crawford Hill to Alliance. The Orange Sub kicks out another train, this one headed west 10 miles to Gillette. This coal may be headed to a power plant in Washington State or export coal bound for Roberts Bank, British Columbia. The fourth train is an eastbound empty bound for a mine on the Orange Sub. The sight of a loaded coal train rolling out of Caballo Mine begs the question, what's so special about the coal from the Powder River Basin? After all, it costs more to haul coal from Wyoming to a power plant in Michigan than from, say, Kentucky. The answer? Powder River coal is more economical than Eastern coal, despite higher transportation costs. Powder River coal also has a lower average fuel cost per BTU than most Eastern coal. The Federal Clean Air Act also has an impact on the price and desirability of Western coal. Utilities burning high-sulfur Eastern coal face a choice: invest in expensive scrubbers to reduce pollution, or switch to low-sulfur Western coal. The latter has 17% to less than 50% of the sulfur content of most Eastern coal. 50 miles or so south of Donkey Creek sits the largest coal mine in the U.S., Black Thunder. In 1996, production was more than 39 million tons mined from a coal seam that averages 69 feet in thickness. Even with a steady parade of BNSF and UP trains hauling coal from the mine, total remaining reserves are approximately 750 million tons. To load trains quickly and efficiently, Black Thunder employs 2 high-speed unit train loadouts that load 6,000 tons per loop per hour. What BNSF and UP haul away is sub-bituminous coal rated at 8,800 BTU per pound with a sulfur content of only 0.34%. Although BNSF and UP serve the mine with trains, the actual contract is usually between the railroad and the utility. Many utilities even own their own coal cars. BNSF and UP merely provide the service. Each railroad contracts with the utility to deliver so many tons of coal. The utility, in turn, contracts with the coal company to load the specific type of coal the utility wants to burn. Sometimes a mine will have a problem loading, such as when the loading equipment breaks down. Naturally, the mine doesn't want to lose the load, but the railroad and the utility want the train loaded. So the railroad and the utility find an alternate mine to load that train. By keeping the set moving, the railroad maintains momentum. The one place you don't want to be on the Orange Sub is standing still. The Orange Sub's physical plant is the heaviest built, heaviest supported piece of track on BNSF. It boasts the components of a super railroad, 136-pound ribbon rail and concrete ties. Although traffic during the day is heavy, many trains move at night while the track and signal forces rest. Trains do bunch up during the 10 months that constitute the maintenance season. Some fleeting of trains occurs, by which several trains follow each other in rapid succession. BNSF manages the situation carefully. After all, if something happens in a fleet and a train stalls, that can lead to a delay. And in a worst-case scenario, one delay can set up a domino effect that cripples the rest of the trains in the fleet. One solution to capacity problems is the addition of a third main track. Anyone who thinks railroading is in decline needs to spend some time on the Orange Sub's triple-track main. The 3 main tracks squeeze back to 2 at a nondescript location called Crossover 58.1. One of the few glimmers of civilization on Highway 59 between Gillette and Douglas is Bill, Wyoming. What you'll find on the highway is a post office and a small store that mainly sells snacks, soft drinks, and beer. Bill means something else to Union Pacific. Here, road crews from South Morrill, Nebraska hand their trains over to local crews. Those crews deliver the empties to mines for loading, then return to Bill. A rested crew then takes the loads back to the crew change at South Morrill. Despite the fact that BNSF and UP are rivals, the two companies work together well. Essentially, the Orange sub is considered to be one railroad. BNSF depends on UP's signal department people for ideas. UP and BNSF also work closely on the capital expansion needed to meet the area's expected growth. Case in point, this new signal bridge at milepost 81. It replaces an older bridge removed to make room for a fourth main track. In January 1998, Union Pacific loaded 827 coal trains in the Powder River Basin for a daily average of 26.7 trains. A slotting system has been devised to equalize the time both railroads spend on the line. UP, for example, has 29 slots that it has to take in a 24-hour period from midnight to midnight. If it falls too far behind, it loses the slot. BNSF also has slots coming into the south end of the Orange sub from Guernsey and from the north through Donkey Creek. BNSF gets nervous when traffic on the Orange sub gets much above 30 or 40 trains. Above 40 trains, BNSF stops bringing trains in and lets the traffic level out. With centralized traffic control and a long chunk of triple track, the Orange sub can support a lot of trains. It also helps that on any given time, trains leave the main line and enter the mines for loading. All UP trains enter and leave through the Orange sub's south end. Factor in the BNSF trains that also use the south end to reach Guernsey, and what you have is one of the busiest pieces of freight railroading in North America. The BNSF-UP joint trackage ends at Shawnee Junction, 35 miles south of Bill. Looking north, Shawnee Junction looks like an upside-down letter Y. The main stem is the Orange sub. The tracks to the right are UP's Powder River sub, which lead to Joyce and the crew change at South Morrill. This BNSF train is a load headed east to Bridger Junction. From there, the train will swing onto the Canyon sub for the 38-mile run to Guernsey. As you might expect, Shawnee Junction is a maze of switches that allow the Fort Worth dispatcher considerable flexibility. To keep the switches working in cold weather, BNSF maintains switch heaters. The propane storage tanks next to the main line show that the switches are heated in cold weather to lower the chance of switch failure. Eastbound UP trains leave Shawnee Junction for new trackage between here and the old CNNW timetable station of Shawnee. From Shawnee, they use the old Cowboy line to Crandall, which has been completely rebuilt for coal train service. At Crandall, they use another new piece of railroad to reach the old UP main at Joyce, Nebraska. Although the UP routing may sound complicated, it's undoubtedly less congested than the joint line this UP empty will face on its trip east to Bill. Sunset on the Orange subdivision doesn't mean much to the railroads that operate here. The Powder River Basin has over 25 billion tons of demonstrated reserves. Including the Powder River Basin, 41% of Wyoming contains accessible coal deposits. That total equals 24% of the country's coal reserves. During the early 1970s, BN handled about 20 million tons of coal annually. By 1975, that number had doubled. Today, BNSF handles more than 170 million tons of coal annually. The railroad expects to move 200 million tons by the year 2000. Based on those numbers, it's a safe bet that the trains of the Powder River Basin will continue to roll through the night and through the next century.
And there's something about the murder you guys had to fix.